Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and today we're taking a look at the Space Marines of Leviathan. This video is sponsored by CMO Games. More on that later. The Space Marines of Leviathan. Can the first company hold back the Horde? This awesome new edition of Warhammer 40,000 is kicking off with Leviathan, a huge box set packed with new miniatures. It's the first place you'll be able to get your hands on the excellent Terminators, Terminator Librarian, and Lieutenant we've seen already. But there's still more to come from the Adeptus Astartes. Alright, so here we see the captain in Terminator armor. So I have to say right off the bat, they did a great job on this model, putting enough detail on the actual model itself that there's stuff there to paint, but also leaving enough negative space that you can add in extras. So he has a bunch of cool iconography on the actual model, but he's not chapter specific, so you can still use decals or paint him any way that you want, so that he is not dedicated to a particular chapter, which is great if you are a Space Marine player. I like the stature and overall pose of the model. The sword looks absolutely awesome, loaded with super cool details. I'm a big fan of this model. Very, very nice. Excellent execution. The leader of the strike force is a captain, resplendent in ornate Terminator armor. His scenic base features the severed head of a Screamer killer half buried in the dirt. So at least we know he's got the chops to deal with that live Screamer killer in the Tyranid force. The captain pictured on the box is none other than Cerberus Egaman. But don't worry if you're not a son of Macrog. The miniature itself is a chapter agnostic, so you can have him represent a captain from any chapter you like. And next we have the new Librarian in Terminator armor. So we have seen this model already, but it is absolutely beautiful. I love the runes carved into the armor. The axe itself is awesome, and the pose is absolutely glorious. So not only is the actual model loaded up with super cool details, but the pose is awesome as well, and definitely looking forward to a new Librarian model. In the absence of the flowing robes that usually mark members of the Librarian, our Psychic Champion has opted for plenty of runic ornamentations on his Terminator armor. He's also sporting the classic horn skull icon, worn by Librarians since the days of the Road Trader. Very, very cool. Definitely a huge fan and perfectly executed. And next we have the Lieutenant with Combi-Flamer. So I am absolutely loving this model. I really like that he has the Combi-Flamer on his side, but also those sweet knives. Definitely a throwback to the old school Tyrannic War Veterans. Really, really well done. Perfect execution. Absolutely loving the models in this set. And the fact that we have such awesome and dynamic poses with easy to build minis just tells you the level that Games Workshop's production is coming to. Not only are they designing awesome miniatures, but the actual execution, flawless. This lone wolf has more than a few Tyranid trophies hanging off his armor, which we're sure aren't Codex compliant. The alien chitin carapace down his right shoulder and arm should come in plenty handy against the acidic ichor coating his blade, and if you include the one stuck into his scenic base, this full boss lieutenant has upgraded to 3 knives. And next we have the Apothecary Biologis. So this dude is super cool. Definitely is similar to an old school Apothecary. We've seen a Primaris as well as our traditional style. But this dude is in Gravis armor. So he is extra chunky. And the title Biologis kind of gives us the impression that he's here to do a little something different. So your typical Apothecary is sort of like your medic, your healer to preserve the gene seed if you can't save the Marine, or even potentially bring a Marine back from the dead with a stratagem. But this guy, we get the impression that he is sort of like gathering up some alien matter and is going to be doing some experimentation on it to potentially improve the effectiveness of his Space Marine comrades. So very, very interesting. So perhaps he'll provide some sort of in-game buffs if he can get access to a dead monster or something like that. Very cool. Definitely looking forward to seeing where they go with this. As far as the model is concerned, absolutely beautiful. Definitely a huge fan of the extra chunky armor. I love that he has all of his like little scissors and tweezers and everything in his little robe in front there, kind of like tucked into his tabard. He looks super dynamic, and whatever he's carrying inside of that container must be important. Very, very nice model. Definitely a huge fan. The new Apothecary Biologis is a scientist rather than a doctor, and takes to the field without his narthecium. Instead, he's suited up in thick Gravis armor and frontline service, where he uses the advanced Vivispectrum attachment to his backpack and wrist to analyze fallen foes in order to learn their weaknesses. And next we have the Terminator Squad. So here we see the Terminator Sergeant, armed with the Stormbolter and Power Sword. Very, very cool. And then obviously distinguished by his helmet, as well as his extra adornments on his armor. I'm really liking the new poses on these guys. They look great. They still have the classic Terminator look. They didn't go over the top of them, and they left plenty of space for you to customize them yourselves. Each one of these dudes is super awesome, and they really went the distance with like the weathering on the armor, and in this case the checkered pattern on the fist. Just really shows some of the opportunity that we have to customize these minis. They have a lot of the traditional style and look of the old Terminators, but everything has just been brought up to 10. The assault cannon still has that awesome classic look to it. He's striding forward, just unleashing a salvo of bullets. Definitely a huge fan of the new Terminators. They knocked it out of the park, and they didn't go so over the top that they're cringe. I really love it. As we know, the new Terminators are an awesome update on classic, and not too much of their iconic design has changed. Saved updated proportions of their pretty hefty increase in size. The new teleport Homer is also rather fancy, as befits one of the stars of the cinematic trailer. Very, very cool. Definitely a huge fan of the new Terminators. And next we have the Sternguard Veterans. So look at these. I mean, just absolutely beautiful. Definitely a combination of like an intercessor or traditional Primaris Space Marine with like the Blade Guard veteran kind of tabard and everything. I really, really like it. Now, the only problem here is, and this is totally just nitpicking because it's me, I hate when somebody has like an awesome weapon and then they're shooting off their pistol. Like, I get it, it's cool, maybe he's reloading or something like that, but I just think that Games Workshop does it way too often with the sergeants, where they have some awesome, amazing gun and then they're firing off their pistol. This is obviously a specific example where would you choose to shoot your pistol, or are you going to be unloading with your Combi-Bolter and Melta? Obviously. And it was the same thing with the new Desolation Squad as well. The leader of the squad is shooting off his pistol and just has like his big, hefty, like rocket launcher cannon just casually in his other hand. And again, it's not that there's anything wrong with the actual miniature. It's just not one of my favorite poses, and Games Workshop seems to do it all the time. But putting that aside, absolutely beautiful miniature. Really, really loving this guy. And then we see the first of the new Sternguard Veterans. Awesome, carrying obviously a new bolt rifle and clearly been Primarisized. And then here we see with a heavy bolter, definitely liking the look of this. Very, very cool. I'd really like to see the Sternguard Veterans up next to some heavy intercessors, as these guys look really, really chunky, but I have a feeling that when we see them next to a heavy intercessor, it'll kind of give us a better size comparison. Also, I'd like to see them next to just a regular intercessor as well, so we can get a full scope of exactly how big and chunky these boys are. But very, very cool. And here we see one with a combi plasma, and very interesting as we see the clip has been moved to the top right there. I'm sure some of you weapon experts out there can let me know if this is actually viable or, you know, some crazy design flaw, but it looks pretty cool. And again, here we see once again with the bolt weapon and then the cool scope on top. Just enough details to make these guys look awesome, but without going overboard. Definitely a huge fan of these new models. They look absolutely outstanding. The Sternguard Veterans are true masters in the use of the Holy Bolt Gun and come to battle with an array of deadly bolter variants. They primarily wear a Tacticus armor, but it has been adorned with relics and combined with parts from the older armor marks to demonstrate their stations in the chapter. So very, very cool. I think Games Workshop has really just nailed it. I love that they are combining the old school Firstborn Marines and Primaris Marines to just make the actual like Astartes. I love that they're taking away some of those distinctions and making the transports all viable within the army, rather than having this weird kind of like line drawn between the Primaris and the Firstborn. Excellent decision in my opinion, and beautiful models. And now we're on to the Infernus Squad. So very cool. They haven't specifically said anything about these guys yet, but based on the composition of the set, I'm assuming that you're going to get at least one troops, and that would obviously be these guys. So very, very cool. It looks like we're essentially going to have intercessors that are carrying flamers. Again, though, we see that same thing Games Workshop likes to do. Instead of using this awesome flamer weapon right there, he's reaching for his knife and has a pistol in hand. It's cool. I get it. Maybe he's about to be in combat, so he's not going to be able to use those weapons. But I just think they go overboard on it far too often, and they don't offer options for people that don't like that, like myself. Again, just nitpicking, but very, very cool models here. All right, and then a couple more of the Infernus Bros. Definitely a big fan. They have that sort of like top grip style that we've seen in many cases. I do like that. I think it's a cool look. Very nice. See enough distinction that we have like some different poses between these guys. But overall, uniform looking squad. And here we have one throwing a grenade. That's pretty cool. Definitely a very dynamic pose. I like that they're mixing it up with that. And this guy's going the other route. Instead of using the top grip, he's holding it by the traditional down here as well, showing that both of those options are viable. So very cool. Definitely a big fan of these guys. I really, really like them, and they're definitely going to have some play, not only in this box set, obviously, against all of those gaunts, but just in general. I think the option to have a flamer equipped, like tactical squad, basically, or intercessor squad is really nice. Huge fan of these guys. Definitely cool. And we see in this case, not only has Games Workshop blessed us with the minis, but we have the data card as well. After the Pyroblasters proved to be so popular amongst Black Templar Crusade squads, it's not surprising to see that they rolled out across the Space Marine chapters. These Infernus squads are exactly the right remedy for a nasty case of the Tyranids. And with 10 of them in the box, they're easy enough to roast those Xenos into oblivion. So we see the Infernus Squad data card here, movement 6, toughness 4, save 3+, wounds 2, leadership 6+, OC 1. So everything you would assume. And then as far as their ranged weapon profiles, we have the bolt pistol and we have the Pyroblaster. So the Pyroblaster ignores cover and has the Torrent special rule, 12-inch range, D6 attacks, ballistic skill not any as flame weapons automatically hit, and then it is strength 5, AP 0, damage 1. So strength 5, interesting enough. I'm not sure if this is going to compare to a regular flamethrower, which would be strength 4, and this is just a little bit stronger, but very nice here. And then we see the Oath of Moment and Purge the Foe abilities. Purge the Foe. In your shooting phase, after this unit has shot, you can select one enemy infantry unit hit by one or more of those attacks made with a Pyroblaster. This enemy unit must take a Battle Shock test. So very cool. Definitely have some psychological effects associated with the Pyroblaster shooting you. And in the case of gaunts, if they're caught out of synapse range, definitely could have some devastating effects on their morale. Very, very cool. Now a quick message from today's sponsor. CMO Games has been selling Games Workshop products online for over 20 years. They carry the full line of Games Workshop products, including Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar, Necromunda, Blood Bowl, paint tools, and more. Almost all Games Workshop products are priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games takes pre-orders for most Games Workshop products released at their earliest date possible. 12:01 a.m. on Saturday, they go live. Most of these pre-order products are also priced at 15% off MSRP. CMO Games offer free shipping in the US 48 with an order of $50 or more. Their customer service is top-notch and they ship most orders within 24 hours. Visit CMOGames.com using the affiliate link in the description and let them know that you heard about CMO Games from Warhammer Man. Now back to the video. And moving right along, we see the Ballistus Dreadnought, the chunkiest of boys. So this is definitely a throwback to the old school style dreadnoughts where the twin-linked las cannon was the auto-include and then you could take the missile launcher as well. You did have options back with the old style dreadnoughts to swap out the missile launcher for a fist or the las cannon for some other heavy hitting ranged weapon. Now because this is coming in the box set and this is going to be an easy to build kit, it's more likely than not going to be very limited on the options. So there's a good possibility that it will only include these two weapons. Later on, they will likely, or realistically, without a doubt, have a full-on kit for this guy. And the Ballistus will have a bunch of different options. And this will essentially just be your Redemptor chassis with all of the various options of like an old school dreadnought. And I would imagine that this is going to basically replace the old school style, as not only are the models super dated, but a lot of the molds that they've been using are 10 or even 20 years old. So we don't know yet if they're going to be completely phasing out some of these older models, some of the older firstborn kits and stuff like that. But I think more likely than not that they are essentially blending everything together. So rather than getting rid of the firstborn, they're just kind of updating it into the new style and look. And I think that's a great decision. There was definitely some speculation as the Primaris were getting rolled out that they were going to completely replace the old school stuff. Games Workshop obviously went the other direction and sort of did like a bifurcation of the Space Marines. And now they're blending it all back together. And I don't think their idea is to get rid of the old stuff. So you can always still use your old models and your traditional stuff, but they're all available in the new range with fancy new names and kits. And once again, we have the Ballistus Dreadnought datasheet. Movement 8, toughness 10, save 2+. So very interesting to see him upgraded to a 2+ save. Awesome. Wounds 12, leadership 6+, OC 4. And we have the Ballistus Missile Launcher, frag, and crack profiles. 48-inch range, 2d6 on the frag, 2 shots on the crack. Ballistic skill is 3 for both. Strength 5 on the frag, strength 10 on the crack. AP 0 on the frag, damage 1. AP -2 on the crack, d6 damage. So very similar to the existing profiles, but we see that the Ballistus Missile Launcher is 2d6 shots instead, and it is strength 5, as opposed to your typical frag, which would be a d6 shots, strength 4 in the current edition. And then for the crack, again, upgraded from 1 shot to 2, and it's coming in at strength 10 with -2 d6 damage instead of your more traditional strength 8. So they have definitely stepped everything up. Toughness 10 and 2+ save, as well as hard-hitting weapons. And then we see the Ballistus Las Cannon, 48-inch range, 2 shots as well, 3+ to hit. Strength is 12, -3 AP, and d6 +1 damage. I think that's great because it essentially doubles the minimum damage that the las cannon's going to do. So I really like that they went this route and added at least +1 to the minimum damage. The difference between going through all of the shooting, damage, your opponent failing to save, etc., and then rolling and doing only 1 damage versus doing a d6 +1 is really huge. I mean, it doubles the minimum potential damage this thing can do. And on the higher end of the spectrum, if you're already doing 6, the extra 1 probably doesn't matter that much, but makes this thing much more consistent damage dealer. So very, very cool. And then we also see a new melee attack, the Armored Feet. So because he doesn't have a dedicated melee weapon, he can attack with his feet. Attacks 5, weapon skill 3+, strength 7, AP 0, damage 1. And we see the abilities, core, deadly demise, D3. So we've already seen that rule before. That means that when he potentially explodes, he can do up to a D3 mortal wounds. We know the Oath of Moment focus fire rule. And then we have the Ballistus Strike. Each time this model makes a ranged attack that targets a unit that is not below half strength, you can reroll the hit roll. Wow, that's very good. But say you were to unload on a squad of gaunts or something like that with the missile launcher, as he would be re-rolling his 2d6 attacks to hit. And then we see damaged 1 to 4 wounds remaining. So this is like the new version of degrading for vehicles. So he has 12 wounds, but doesn't have like a regular degrading chart as he goes down. But once he's down to between 1 and 4 wounds remaining, each time this model makes an attack, subtract 1 from the hit roll. So you don't have to worry about all the different stats getting modified and everything. It's just straight up -1 to hit once he has lost 8 or more wounds. So very, very cool. You'll need all the strength and skills of the first company to hold back the tide of tyrannage, sharing the Leviathan box set. While you're drilling your anti-swarm tactics, take a breather and cast your eyes back to the Warhammer Fest hub to find out what else has been revealed today. So very, very cool. Definitely a huge fan of all the models shown off here. The Space Marines are absolutely stunning. Not only are the rules and the new edition super exciting, but the models are absolutely stellar. And having been around in Warhammer since 1st edition and Rogue Trader way back in the day, I can say without a doubt, this is by far the best box Games Workshop has ever released. Indominus was absolutely amazing and some of the best value Games Workshop has ever offered. And I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that this is going to be even better. Without even knowing the price of this box set, I can tell you right now, this is probably the best deal Games Workshop has or ever will offer. And if it's even close to the Age of Darkness Horus Heresy launch box, this thing is going to be amazing. And I know lately there's been a lot of issues getting a hold of some of the limited edition stuff, but with that Indominus set, it did sell out extremely fast, and Games Workshop immediately brought back made-to-order sets so that anybody who wanted them could get a hold of them. And I suspect that this being the new 10th edition launch box, that they'll do the same thing. Now, obviously, we don't know for sure until they make an announcement like that, but I think there's a very high probability. So please don't worry about getting a hold of these models, as I think Games Workshop is going to be making plenty of them to go around. So let me know what you guys are most excited about. Always like to hear back from you in the comments. I know these new Space Marines are absolutely amazing, and I cannot wait to get a couple sets of them and paint them up in some of the various chapters. I've been a long time Blood Angels player, Ultramarines as well, and I've got quite a few other chapters of Space Marines, and I'm going to need some of these guys to join them all. So special thanks to CMO Games for sponsoring the video. As always, check out the link in the description to save 15%. And that's it for today. Warhammer Man Studios. I'm Warhammer Man, and I cannot wait for this new launch box. And I'm out of here.